Okay, talking about finding the equation of a line from the table. And here's the thing. What I want to do first is I'm going to write a table for us to kind of use as we're going to be talking about this, okay? And so we're going to do a little bit of observation. Here's my X, here's my Y. And I'm going to try to go relatively easily through what we're going to do here and see how that's going to go. So we're going to do X's will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then my Y's, I'm going to go, 7, 10, 13, 16. And what would the next one be, guys? Anybody have any idea? If I follow this pattern, what would this next one right there be?
19.
Indeed, because right now that is what I would have to get to because we can kind of see the way this change is going to happen. So let's do what we've known how to do up to this point, okay? You just found the pattern by getting up what we're going to be talking about there. Let's do our slope while we're doing this. Let's write this off on the side. Our slope for something like this, that is our change in y over our change in x. So let's write that number. What is the change in y over the change in x? What do we have to do here? Like what's my change in y? If I look here, how much am I going up by each time? 3, absolutely correct. And if I look at my change in x, what am I going up by each time there? I'm going up by 1. Okay, so my slope for this is 3 over 1. Or if I want to just write it as a whole number, I could say that my slope is 3. That is helpful because that is something we're going to have to do anytime we find the equation from a table. You got to find the slope. That is a key for something like this. Now, here's the part about this. When I say I'm finding the equation of a line, basically what that means we're going to do is find something so that if I gave you an x value and you plugged it into this equation, you would get out the y value. So like right now, if I plug in a 0, I get out 7. If I plug in a 1, I get out 10. If I plug in a 2, I get out 3. If I plug in a 3, I get out 16. It's like that. And so here's the thing that I think is going to be helpful for you to think about when we do something like that. So when we do this, essentially your equations are going to be written in a format. So, and I'm going to write this kind of down on the bottom, that our general format is going to be y is going to equal, and then there is going to be something with x here, right? So here's the thing. What I want to make sure that you understand is that when we're doing this, and okay, somebody typed in something privately to me about this that's super close, and I'm going to tell you you're right in a second. There's one thing that we got to do with it. I'm going to build to it in just a second here. Our general format is that you're going to have x and some stuff with it, like pluses and minuses and multiplications and things like that. I'm going to tell you one thing that you need to know. That number 3 has to be here, okay? It's got to be here someplace because if you don't have the number 3, then that's the thing that has us go up by this amount, okay? So I know there's going to be a 3 there. And so here's the thing about this that I want to make sure that you understand. When I plug in a 0 for x, that is going to completely go away, right? Whether I have something being multiplied by this x or not, that is going to be gone. So what I want you to think about is this. One of the things that is really, really important when we're going to be looking at a table to be able to figure out the equation, the 0 term is important. And the reason why it's important if you're going to be creating an equation, but it's also important if you're going to be creating a line. The 0 term, when we look at this, is our place to start because if I plug in a 0 for x, it's gone, right? If I plug in a 0 times anything, it's like adding nothing. But when I'm done with the 0, I end up with a 7. So what I'm going to have to do is take that 0 term, tack it in here at the end. And remember, since that's a positive 7, I'm going to have to do a plus there. Okay? So right now, this is what we do. As we think about this, we know we're going to have to add 7 to whatever I plug in here. Okay? So if I get that 0 in here, 0 plus 7 is 7. This one works for that first one. If I plug in a 0, I get out a 7. Y equals 7. We're done. Okay. Here's the problem. If I plug in a 1 right here, 1 plus 7 is 8. is not 10. And 2 plus 7 is 9. It is not 13. So can you guys think, what am I going to have to do with the x to get us to a point where I know that 7 has to be there because that's what I started with. What am I going to have to do with the x so that I can get these numbers down here on the bottom? Does anybody have an idea? And I'm really interested to see sort of what you guys come up with. Some of you may have seen this before too, but I'm interested to see what will I have to put with the x so that I can get these output values here, knowing I got to add 7. Does anybody have an idea? And if you don't, I'll tell you, I promise. But, you know, I see, Kane, you said 3. So if I put that 3 with it, well, let's think about what that would mean. If I put a 3 right there, 3 times 0, that's 0. Because again, that 0 wouldn't matter. Plus 7, we're good. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 7 is 10. That legitimately works. Okay, let's try the 2. 3 times 2. 3 times 2 is 6. And 6 plus 7, that's 13. That one works as well. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 7 is 16. Hey, you got it. That's absolutely correct. And if we think about it, it's because, hey, look, that slope we found, that rate of change, that number is going to be right there on the front. So what this means we have to do then, when we're finding the general format for a line, anytime you have this, you've got to have, and you've got to have the slope, the thing that tells us our rate of change, and you've got to have that 0 term because that tells us what we're going to be starting with here, because that's the place where, like, if I didn't have an x, it's what would be left behind. So what you have to think about when we're doing this is, with the equation of a line, it's going to be y is going to equal, and then in front of this x, I'm going to have my rate of change or slope, whatever that number is, that goes in front of the x because that tells us what we're going up by each time. Plus, and then in here, I'm going to have whatever my 0 term is. Now, that's a lot of freaking words, okay? So let's just do this for a second. One of the things that is I think helpful for us, do you guys, what's the letter that we use to talk about slope? Do you guys remember? Because we used it before. What's the letter we use for slope? M. Okay, let's write that, okay? So y equals mx plus that 0 term. Now I'm going to tell you, the 0 term, when they talk about that 0 term, they use the letter B. Why do they use the letter B? I have zero idea, okay? So this could be a B. Right now, we're going to call that the 0 term. It's going to be y equals mx plus b, but at the same time, if you remember that it's the 0 term, you're going to know what to look for. M is only slope, so we're just going to call it that way. This is what we do to find out the equation of a line from a table, okay? You look at a table, you find the slope, you find the 0 term, you plug it in, you're good to go. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to put together a couple different tables for us to use this with, but I want you to remember that this guy right here, this is the most important thing. This is what we're going to do. And again, I'll put a little b there if you want to think about it as b, but that's what we're going to be doing. So what I want to do now, let me give you another example. I'm going to rewrite this on the top of the page so we kind of have a chance to look at it. So we know we're looking for y is equal to mx plus our 0 term. Okay, so let's give you a table. Let's see what we can come up with here. We got our x, we got our y. I'm going to start with -4, -3, -2, 1, 0, 1. And then here I am going to go 16, 14, 12, 10, 9, and oop, I did that wrong. This right here should be 8, and this should be 6. See what happens when you don't start thinking about this. You look at it, you go, wait, hold on, what? So we've got it. That is the correct table. That is what I was hoping for. So here's the question that I have for you. What do we do first? What do we have to find first when we're doing this? There's actually 2 answers to this, but I want to see what you guys say. What do I find first? And you're absolutely right. I find the slope. Okay, so what I want to do first, slope, change in y over change in x. So if we're doing this, we could subtract numbers, but let's look at this for a minute. What am I going up by here each time? How much does that go up by each time?
1.
Yep. So I will have +1 here. That is my change in x on the bottom. And then if I look here, 16 to 14, 14 to 12, 12 to 10, what am I doing there each time? It's 2. Now here's the question. Positives and negatives are important. Am I adding 2 or subtracting 2? Because that's important here. It's minus. And the reason why that's important is to find that equation. If I'm subtracting 2 each time, that has to be written in the number that we use for our slope, because that tells us how this changes. Now, again, any number divided by 1, I could just say is that whole number. So our slope is -2. Now, here's what I like to do, okay? When I'm doing these equations, I know it's y equals mx plus b, or plus our slope, or plus our y-intercept, plus our 0 term. My brain stopped mid-thought. You see what just happened right there? So I just got that slope. Let's put that guy in there. -2x is where I'm starting. Now, I need a 0 term here. What is our 0 term? And the person threw it privately is real close. What we have to think about is this. When I say my 0 term, I don't necessarily mean the first value I started with here. What I actually mean is the term I get when 0 is the x. That's the part that's important. So what I want to look for when I'm finding that 0 term, I want to look for where is x equal to 0? Because remember, when I plug 0 in here, this whole thing goes away. So whatever's left behind, that's going to be my 0 term. So when I look here, that's a 0, which means 8 is the y value that goes with it. I look for my 0 for my x. So in this case, it's going to be an 8. Now, is that a positive or a negative 8 there? Tell me, positive or negative? Somebody's got to tell me. Positive or negative 8? Positive 8. So if it is a positive 8, I got to put a plus. If this was a negative 8, I would put a minus. Whatever number you have as your 0 term, whether it's positive or negative, that's what you put at the end of this. So our equation for this is going to be y is equal to -2x plus 8. Okay? Now, let's go do another one of these to make sure we get a chance to kind of get some practice. And then I'm going to stop doing these on the page here, and I'm going to go directly to our Delta Math and have you look at some of those too, because sometimes seeing it the way they're going to give it to you is going to be important as well. So let's do another one. And I'm bringing these up off the dome. So this does come up with something where I go, well, let's try not to screw this up too bad. Okay, so I'm going to do right over here. Let's go. Here's our X. Here's our Y. Let's go across here. Okay. -2, 0, 2, 4, 6. And then over here, I'm going to go 9. Oh, let's do this. 9, 14, 19, 24, 29. Okay. Same thing that we did before. We find the slope, we find the 0 term, we make our equation. In fact, let's do this first. Y'all, what is the 0 term? What is the 0 term here? So right now I got -2 and I got 9 and I got 14 as answers. And let's think for a second. When we find the 0 term, what I want you to look for is, you know that x equals 0, y equals what? That's what I'm looking for. So where does x equal 0 here? I look right there. There's my x. I look for where the x is equal to 0. What is the y value that goes with x equal to 0? 14 is correct. That right there, that is my 0 term, okay? And guys, this is the way that they'll do it. Sometimes they'll give that first, like just like I did with my first example. The first term will be the one with the 0 here. It could be anywhere. What you're looking for is that x equals 0. This is my 0 term, not -2, not 9, because even though I started with that, I'm looking for what is the output when I get a 0 for my x, okay? So with that being said, let's write that down. We know this 0 term is 14. Now let's talk about our slope for a second. And this one is a little bit different, okay? My slope here, I'm looking for change in y over change in x. So let's do them one at a time. What's our change in y? How much is that going up by each time? What do we got? This is going +5. Okay, so this is +5 each time. That's going to be our top number here. Let's look at our change in x. How much is that going up by each time? 2. Okay, so +2, +2, +2. I agree. So that's going to be the bottom. Now I want you to look at this for a second. That means that my slope for this equation is not one of those nice whole numbers like I had the last time. So when I write it, I have my 0 term, I have my slope. It's totally fine when you do this. This is y is going to equal mx. So in this case, that's going to be 5/2 x. And then I need to make sure that I have the 0 term after that. And in this case, it's a 14. It's a positive, so that'll be plus 14. Okay, 5/2x, because that's the slope, plus 14. The thing about this that is designed to be a little bit weird is the fact that that number on the bottom of this x changes going up by 2. Okay, so 5/2 is definitely my slope there, plus the 14. Do you want me to go through another one of these before I do the delta math problems? I'm happy to do that, and I think you guys are getting the skills for this, but I just want to make sure. Do you want me to do another one of these? Okay, so let me do this. I will label this one as this page 2. That looks like a R, but you know, guys, you know it's page. Okay, let me do this one here, and if we're going to go through, I'll do an X and a Y, and I'm going to do 5 points again, and let's go, sorry, not the best way to do this. Let's go -6, -3, 0, 3, 6. And then this number up here, I'm going to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you guys ready? What do we have to find first? Slope. All right, cool. We're finding our slope first. That's my m. Change in y over change in x. Okay, so let's do our change in y first. That's this guy right here. How much am I going up by each time there? +1. Okay, and I agree. 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. Again, if you don't know, just subtract my numbers. You can see what we got. So that means my change in y is a +1 on the top. Solid. Okay, let's look at our change in x. How much am I changing each time here? +3 is correct. I'm going to be adding 3 each time here. That puts that 3 on the bottom. So again, we know we're going to have a slope that is going to be a fraction. So my first step for this equation is y is equal to 1/3 x. And now all I need left is that 0 term. What is the 0 term in my table here, guys? 4 is 100% correct. X is 0. Y is 4, so that's going to go here. Since it's a +4, I'm going to write +4, and now I have my equation. Y equals 1/3 x plus 4. Okay, does this feel manageable, doable for you guys now? Does that feel like something, now that we've done that one, that things make sense? All right, solid. So here's what we're going to do. I'm still recording, which is totally fine. This is page 3. I am going to move right now, and I'm going to take us to delta math. Now, this is going to take a second, so I do apologize for that. We change my share. Nope, that's not the one. My new share, I'm going to change this just so it's the regular computer. And when I do this, let me take us to, oh, come on. Everything is rolling slow today, guys. We're going to go to delta math, and I want to take you through so we can kind of look at the sorts of problems that we could see here. Okay, so logging in. We're going to look at the sorts of problems that we have for this. The assignment that we have is this one. And we're looking at table to linear equation level 1. Okay, so let's look at this for just a second. Now, it is harder to do some of these things here, but I think we should be okay. So tell me for a minute, We know that our slope, I think I can do this with annotation. So let me see. We know that our slope is equal to our change in y over our change in x. So tell me, what is my y changing by each time here? Can you guys tell me how much I'm going up by each time for that y? Anybody got an idea for that one? Sometimes it's easier. Yep, somebody typed it already, but let me see if one other person can say it. If I'm looking at this, sometimes the negatives mess with me. If you go to the positives, it might be easier to see. From 4 to 10 and from 10 to 16, how much am I going up by each of those times? Let's think. So I see an 8 and I see a 6. Now, what I would do if I looked at that, 16 minus 10 is 6. 10 minus 4 is 6. So in this case, 6 is the number that I'm going to have there. Now, the change in x, how much am I going up by each time here? Yeah, it's just going to be 1. So this is 6 over 1. Now, y'all, do I have to put a 1 on the bottom of this, or am I okay just typing the 6? 6 is fine. Okay, solid. So right now then, if that's going to be the case, that means if I go in here, I know it's y is going to equal that slope, so 6x. Now, what is my y? What is my zero term? What is the zero term from this table so that I can add that in here? I see somebody put it, but I see another person put it here too. More than one person put this, the -8. I look at that 0, -8, which means here it's 6x minus 8. I have to have that minus there because of the -8. So if I submit this answer, let's see, y equals 6x minus 8. Is that what I want? Yes. Bam. And in fact, if you look at what they did, they're showing us we went plus 6 each time here. We got that -8 because it's the zero term. That's what we got. Now, I think that should be enough for you guys to sort of know what it is that we've got here. Do you feel okay with this now? Okay. So I am going to do this. I am going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop recording, and